Item number 5, discussion of position for relief from vexatious FOIA requester. Christy wrote me a letter after receiving some correspondence, and so I said I would put it on the agenda. So one of the questions you asked was, or one of the statements you made was that the person for whom this filing was made was not listed on the filing or not clearly said. So the answer to your question is it's June Logie.
No, my question was that person was notified when it was filed.
No, there's no requirement that that be done. Okay.
Well,
so there are a number of issues here. Yeah. Go ahead. Are you going to speak first? Feel free.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So there's a statute on the books in the state of Connecticut for the protection of towns and the people of towns and the governments of towns that allows towns to seek, or organizations to seek relief from what is termed vexatious freedom of information requests. The principle is that freedom of information requests can be used as a tool to disrupt and obstruct the workings of governments. That's why it's on the books. We don't write the statutes, although that's actually an interesting question, because we'll talk a little bit later about how the statute got written. But we don't write statutes. That statute exists as protection for all the people in the town, for the taxpayers whose funds are used to fund the people who work in town hall to get things done. We've had a lot of discussions lately about obstructionism. And I've sat quietly, I believe, in the interest of civility, in not discussing this further. There are people who express concerns about what is done by governments in this town and elsewhere with an eye towards making things better. There are also people who start with the premise that they need to find something wrong. There's a difference between the two, which is readily apparent. People in the first group who are trying to make government better are actually gratified to find out that things are okay and are helpful when they find out that things are not, and are willing to work with the town to try and help those things. The second group, and this has been a conversation ever since Nick kind of called people out a little bit. The second group, when they find out that things are right, become increasingly, in a particular case, agitated, and sometimes even abusive. And we've sat at this table and heard the unprecedented actions of people who work for the people of this town coming to selectmen meetings to defend themselves from accusations that they think are completely unreasonable and false. And they've come to defend each other even for that. I took this action on my own because part of my job is to manage town hall. The other selectmen, for the most part, don't interact with the people who work for this town. There's a reason why my desk is there, and the selectmen don't necessarily work within town hall. I took this action. This law exists for a reason. I took it because I think that this individual was harming this town and was disrupting, and to use the word of the day, obstructing the work of government in this town. As you'll see from my complaint, I understand that it's a high bar. People believe that freedom of information is critical, and so do I. And we fulfill all requests, but we also are aware of the fact that these requests can bog down town hall and can be used specifically for that purpose We've also been extremely lenient in allowing people into town hall to have access to material in town hall, to have access to workers in town hall, to the point where it becomes disruptive. As you'll see from my complaint, I have an issue when people go through files, find the information they need, and then FOIA it anyway. I have a problem when people FOIA information, which, yes, like somebody's salary is open to the public. It is FOIAble, but I believe that it's being used and being FOIA'd for purposes that are not fitting the spirit of the Freedom of the Information Act, even if they fit the letter. So I stand behind what I did. We spent a lot of time in town trying to figure out how to be more civil, and I've held off on my discussions about obstructionism, which have been so steadfastly denied by so many. But I stand by what I did, and I am open to further comment.
Just this general statement first about freedom of information. It doesn't matter. You don't have to state purpose as to why you're searching for something. You're open to able to search for any information that doesn't need to have a reason. What people are searching it for is irrelevant. I think my main issue is that, yes, I understand you're in town hall, and I understand it's your responsibility to manage town hall, and you are here. But with all the talk of transparency, nobody knew about this. Nobody knew that this was such a problem and such an issue until 9 months after the fact when a decision came out.
You missed the fact that the people who work in town hall came and sat next to you to explain exactly what this issue was. That they were being personally attacked by this vexatious FOIA person. That doesn't...
Them coming to, no, I didn't miss that. Okay. I sat right here and I saw them and I heard them and I understand their complaints. I'm talking about your actions and the use of the word transparency over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And you do this on November 8th, the day after you got reelected. One of your first priorities of your new administration is to file a complaint against someone seeking information in town. And nobody knows about it for 9 months. That is not transparent in any way, shape, or form. Whatever the motivations were, whatever it is you were trying to protect, that is not transparent. And that is one of my...
It's public knowledge.
Oh, so I should FOIA the Freedom of Information Commission? Sure.
It's been done.
One bad action does not justify another.
Okay.
And the other thing is civility. You have attacked this person in public meetings before.
I have been pointed out errors in what she said.
No, I sat in that seat. Bob Lessler was here. You two got into a yelling match until I stopped it.
Yes, because she refused to acknowledge that she herself had written an ordinance with me, that I invited her to come right with me. I mean, if you want to bring it up, bring it up. If you don't want to bring it up, don't bring it up. I don't want to make this about one person. I want to make this about transparency and civility and the repeated use of those words by this administration and then doing something like this. And then you get the information back and your complaint acknowledges there's this high bar that needs to be met, this high threshold. And then you failed to meet that. And you failed to meet another requirement of the filing of this, which makes it look like a bunch of complaints thrown into a letter that was not clearly put together. And I'm sorry, that is an embarrassment to the town of Easton in front of the Freedom of Information Commission in the way this was filed. If you truly wanted to do this, it should have been done right. And it wasn't. So the fact that there isn't enough information to have them reach a decision is the nature of the complaint. That's simple.
But the accusations are that this is bringing town hall to a halt. And I understand the employees have jobs to do. And I understand that repeated requests and interruptions and everything else gets in the way of that. But it is also a responsibility to provide information. And if we are providing information and there are holes in it and it leads to more requests, that's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. If everything is up to par, everything is in order, everything is there, then presumably the complaint would go away or the request would go away. But when everything isn't up to par and everything isn't in order and there are documents or permits or whatever missing and there's holes in the story, you can only expect more requests to follow, which leads to why aren't things in order, which is actually what the Freedom of Information Act really exists for, is to uncover and discover things that aren't necessarily up to par.
So if you're talking about the completeness of records, yes, we have records in this town that are dozens of years old. We have records that we allow people to access, which, for whatever reason, become incomplete. And that does lead to further questions. I think that you are extremely aware of the fact that that's not the entirety of the story that's happening.
I think it's part of the story.
Okay, but you also know, you understand what the word vexatious means.
I understand what it means.
And you know, as do the people who work here, who've come here to defend themselves, that that's not the whole story and that there's other things at work here. Those things disrupt this town. They hurt the taxpayers of this town. They limit the ability of people in this town, as they've sat here and told you, to do their jobs properly. And this law, the vexatious request law, exists to deal with that. If freedom of information were such an open process and so sacrosanct that there were no restrictions to be placed on it, this law wouldn't exist. But it does, because somebody feels that it needs to be. Now, here's an interesting thing. I haven't fully been able to track down the origin of this provision, but from what I can tell, the origin of this position started in this district with Adam Dunsby sponsoring the legislation and as first selectman. Now, one can only wonder what would have motivated Adam to go to the state and write a state law to deal with vexatious FOIA requests. I don't know the answer to that.
So now that we've gotten the decision back that this is not a vexatious requester, what happens?
We'll continue as we have all along to fulfill FOIA requests.
Clear, a FOIA request has never been denied.
Correct. I understand.
I just want to get that out for the record.
And the only people that can allow us to deny a FOIA request are the state commission.
And can I ask one other question? Maybe just a little break between the two of you guys talking. It could be good for the temperature. If the state had ruled in favor, it would not have denied information. It would just have limited the ability of one person requesting that information. But that same person could literally hand it to another person and get that information from the town.
That is correct.
Okay. So it's not preventing the flow of
information. It's about the request.
Yes. Okay. Just want to be clear about that.
One particular individual.
Well, you can only file for one requester at a time. That is correct.
So back to my question is, now that this, I mean, they didn't deny it. They didn't even consider it.
That's how the process works.
Right. But it didn't get to the commission, the director. It didn't get to the commission. I'm sorry, the executive director has determined that it does not warrant a hearing because it fails to detail conduct that demonstrates vexatious history of requests. Nothing changes, but what about the attitude in town hall?
It has no effect directly on the attitude in town hall. I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, you're
talking. You have an answer that says
you're talking about people in town feeling a certain way and feeling they are not being able to do their jobs and that morale is low and all of these things that played into the complaint that have now not been upheld, so to speak. What are you, as the person sitting in town hall, going to do so that the morale and the attitude of town employees doesn't continue to be adversarial?
So one of the recommendations of the committees was to make visits to town employees by appointment only. I have mixed feelings about that, and I haven't worked to enforce that yet. It's true in most town halls, and you can...
We said that it would be by each department, because certainly there's certain departments that you shouldn't have to make an appointment to pay your dog tax, right?
Right.
I think it was more of a,
I think limiting,
or office hours were the other idea. I mean, one of the things that we discussed on that task force was particularly government employees here in town hall who felt that at times they've been targeted or that their time has been monopolized by, that their time have been monopolized by certain people, 3-4 hours in one day in one department dealing with FOIA requests. I think the way we left it intentionally vague for HR to sort of handle and you as manager of town to handle. And I think that one of the thoughts was, if all FOIA requests should be met, right? No end if or buts about that. But at the same time, if someone needs to get their job done, they might say, I'll finish getting this information to you by, a reasonable amount of time, right? So, but that, again, we didn't make any specific recommendations. We made general recommendations because it's not the role of a task force to tell you how to manage or department heads how to manage their departments. So
I think limiting access to town hall is a slippery slope that I don't think we should go down. I mean, it's a public building.
Was not, to be clear, that was not the recommendation. The recommendation was maybe having certain office hours. Defined times, but
that's a question we can discuss.
Yeah.
I wouldn't make that decision unilaterally. In terms of your questions for how do these people deal with this going forward, we do the best we can. When we manage people, sometimes what they really want to know is that you hear them and that you have their backs. And sometimes that's the best you can do. That's the way management of people is. Sometimes be nice if you can give them everything they wanted, but you can't. So the answer is they know that we will do what we can to allow them to do their jobs for the people of this town to the best of their ability.
I also think attitude clearly starts at the top.
I think you're absolutely right about that.
I mean, my only thing would be that you're here every single day, you're managing the town on a daily basis, and you're interacting daily with employees, and you see how this has interfered with the normal flow of the business of town hall. And I mean, you do have to have your town employees' backs and balance that with, look, everyone deserves the answers to their questions, and no information would have been kept in this situation. But there, I think, it's clearly known in town there is an issue with this particular individual overwhelming the town departments with requests. So, I mean, I back you on what you
in terms of attitude, again, I pointed out the history of the statute because the attitude towards vexatious FOIA requests obviously started before I was in this position. Something motivated my predecessor and assembly person to craft this statute. And I think that the attitude towards certain people predates me by a substantial period of time. If we're talking about
it doesn't need to be perpetuated.
No.
We're sitting here at a Board of Select meeting discussing one particular person who has been labeled, and yes, are there issues? Are there ways that things to be done better? Sure. But we're sitting here at a Board of Selectmen meeting talking about one individual. And if there was such a concern about letting town employees know that you got their back, why wasn't this shared?
And you want to so let me turn that around. We're talking about there's no reason we had to have this conversation about any single individual at all, except that you wanted to know why this was done without telling everybody all of the details about why this was done. This conversation never even had to happen. if you find the conversation troublesome, then we're sitting at a Board of Selectmen meeting discussing one individual. That's why these things were submitted as they were.
Okay, but why weren't they made, why when it was submitted, didn't you let people know, hey, I'm taking steps to resolve this, instead of letting it be silent for 9 months?
Because I didn't know how this was going to turn out. This could have been a nothing. It turns out to be a nothing.
I don't think it's a nothing. And to be clear, I did not request to have it put on the agenda.
No, you wrote me an email. I thought that this was the best way to have a conversation.
I mean, based on my reading the email, it seemed like it was best that it was aired out in public. My opinion. And I mean, in terms of changing the...
One other thing. My email never specifically addressed one individual. It addressed actions and everything else. So the fact that we're sitting here talking about the individual is based on that. My questions were more vaguely practical.
Clearly in the public about the discussion, and the individual is posted all online. So, in several different forums with links and otherwise. So, I don't think it's a big secret here. I also think that in terms of changing attitude in town hall, the morale of the town employees, I think, this is a lever that you had. Didn't work. There's a lever that you had to show them that you're taking steps. There's certainly levers by the individual and other people that are requesting that could be more respectful of people's time. And respectful about coming to meetings, using a public forum to make baseless accusations at times against those people that work in town hall. So it's a two-way street too.
It absolutely is. I agree.
Because I mean, some of the stuff that's said in emails to us or here in public comment, anyone can say whatever they want in public comment, right? There's no vetting. Some of it is to an individual working in town in a certain department, pretty aggressive and pretty personal, and accusations are made that they're breaking the law. Well, every FOIA request has been answered, so prove it. You don't have to prove it to come up here and sit here. You just come up and make accusations against people. And then now it's on a forum where many people in a small town get to hear it about people that are working hard here every single day in town. So it is a two-way street, in my opinion.
Any further discussion? Okay. Item number 6.